Let me say this. The Mariners have hit rock bottom. This is rock bottom right now.
Mm-hmm. Well, when you lose 10 of 13, the entire offense can't hit. Brian Woo's hurt. Luis Castillo hasn't pitched like an ace in a long time. Yeah, this is rock bottom. Now, it feels funny to say rock bottom because they're still in first place. And I think if you ask most people on July 3rd, if the Mariners had a 2-game lead in the AL West, people would say great. But considering where it was 2 weeks ago, they had a 10-game lead, and now it sits at 2, and all these things are starting to unfold. Yeah, low point.
I'm starting to get annoyed at that argument. I mean, they would be 5.5 games back in every other division in baseball. Is that something to be excited about? If the Mariners are 5.5 games back playing like this, it would be even worse. People would still be staying rock bottom. Then everybody would be saying rock bottom. So you take the Mariners out of the American League West, where they're in first place because of nothing they control, pretty much. They've won the games they've won, but they're in first place because the rest of the teams have played absurdly bad until recently when the Astros have played well. If that wasn't the case, the Mariners would not be in first place. And then people would be a lot more pissed off because there could have been a chance, based on how the Mariners were playing before, they could be actually in first place in another division. Not now.
Yeah. Did you know the Mariners in the last week and a half ranked 29th in baseball in WRC Plus as a team?
What? No.
Yeah.
This offense?
Yeah. Well,
the one that got a standing ovation this week?
Yeah, they're 29th. 29th in WRC Plus. As a team, they're at 65. That was entering today's game when they then put up one run on a Cal Raleigh solo homer, today being Wednesday.
Wow. So you're telling me those were real boos, not fake boos at the ballpark?
Oh, people were pissed. People were pissed. People were not having it. People are not having it in this Orioles series because I'll tell you what, it wasn't just in Wednesday's game. Oh, it happened in Tuesday's game too, a lot. And Seattle fans don't boo for the most part. It's not New York. It's not Boston. It's not L.A. Seattle's pretty laid back for the most part.
What I was trying to say is we're used to it.
Yeah, but people are now booing, like, a lot. And again, I know they're in first place, but is it wrong to say when you say the Mariners have hit rock bottom, isn't everything we've just mentioned here in the first couple minutes all fair? Like, how much more can we even say about the offense? I'm sure we'll get into it more, but we all know at this point. 29th in WRC Plus as a team over the last week and a half, but everything else too. Again, the fact Brian Woo's hurt, and yes, they chose to skip a start in the rotation because they had the built-in off day, but guys aren't getting as much rest as a result, and obviously not having Woo doesn't help. The fact that, like, Luis Castillo has been a fine pitcher this year. He's been perfectly fine, but he puts up a lot of 6 and 2s where he has to fight through it pretty hard. He's not really had a start this year where he has looked like the ace that he was acquired as in 2022 or even last year in 2023 when he finished top 5 in Cy Young voting, top 7 in Cy Young voting. He has had to really, really work to get through a lot of these starts. And that all paired with the fact that, again, an offense that it's hard to trust anybody in the lineup right now. You still got injuries in the bullpen. Gabe's not back yet. Santos isn't back yet. We'll get to Logan Evans here in a bit. Man, there's a lot of headaches right now.
You think this is the last time they try the sage in the clubhouse?
No, because it's only been one game and they seem to do it a lot. So no, I don't think it's the last time.
Interesting.
Do you?
Well, does it really have an impact? I know baseball is superstition, but Sage was burned today and they scored 1 run on 1 swing of the bat, and that's it. Against a very okay pitcher. And Craig Kimbrell, by the way, watching him each of the last 2 nights, and he's closed out the game well for the Orioles. Not what he used to be. Not even close. The stuff is not quite as good as it used to be. But it doesn't matter. The Sage didn't help, apparently, in that case. You know what annoys me, Lyle? Do you know what annoys me? So Mariners had a couple of weeks ago, 10-game lead in first place. And then in the 5 series since then, they've played 3 playoff teams into 1 bad team and 1 mediocre team. So it really hasn't mattered how good the team is, where they're playing, or how good the team is and where they're playing. They still managed to lose all those series. They played 3 playoff teams in that stretch. Guardians, Twins, and now the Orioles. Lost all 3 of those series. Play a terrible team in the Miami Marlins. Lost that series. Then an average team in the Tampa Bay Rays. Lost that series as well. So, it hasn't even mattered, really, in that case. I have a couple stats I want to throw at you regarding the Mariners playing good teams this year. But just kind of irks me that the 10-game lead is reached, and teams do play bad over that sense, but the location and the quality of team hasn't mattered. It's just an all-around suck.
It's not great. Now, it hasn't been everywhere. Logan Gilbert and George Kirby have continued to pitch very well outside of Logan Gilbert's start here on Wednesday, which, wasn't his best start of the year. It's hard to knock the guy when he came into that start with a 1.5 ERA for the month of June, and he's still going to be an all-star. So, Logan has pitched very well in the month of June outside of this one start. George Kirby's pitched very well. Munoz has an all-star case in his own right. It's not there's some positive spots, but it doesn't quite outshine everything else that has gone on, especially, again, like we can talk about some of the other pieces all we want, whether, again, it's the injuries or some of the other guys in the rotation, the home run splits. It comes down to the offense. This is a team that was built to be a very, very talented offensive group, and they're not even showing a fraction of it right now. It's really bad.
While the Mariners were on the road in Florida and playing terribly, I was clinging to when they come back home because we knew the Mariners played well at home, and they played up to or above their competition at home, seemingly no matter who they were playing. But they come back home this time, and it hasn't mattered. They've looked like the home field advantage we were trying to tab of how incredible the staff looks and how the offense manages to do just enough at home. It hasn't been. But it also kind of makes sense, Lyle, because, the Mariners' record at home looked pretty nice entering that last road trip before they came back home, and now they've lost 4 or 5 at home since returning to Seattle. But this is something we probably should have looked into more. I mean, their home record was really ballooned by some bad teams. Series wins against the Rangers, the A's, the Angels, the Reds, the Diamondbacks, the White Sox. Not murderer's row. All series the Mariners won or swept. And it made the record look pretty good. But if you saw the Mariners and you saw that they were that good at home, you'd expect them to beat some playoff teams that have visited T-Mobile Park. Well, the Mariners have faced a playoff team in 10 series this season. They won 2 of them. They've beaten the Braves. It's a good series win at home. Braves are the top wild card in the National League right now. And they beat the Royals 2 of 3 at T-Mobile Park as well. The Royals, by the way, are a terrible road team. Terrible away from their home park. So it counts, technically, but them losing series on the road is not a mystery. Not a surprise, I think is the right word to use with that. So 10 series against playoff teams, they've won 2 series against that. Not exactly a intriguing and encouraging statistic.
And should we add the series win against the Braves happened to be thanks to one Mitch Garver swing in a game where they had not scored before the bottom of the 9th in that game?
Yeah, a very relevant stat in that game. So we can nitpick to almost say they have no series wins against playoff teams because the rest of them, they've looked uncompetitive in 2 series against the Orioles, uncompetitive in 2 series against the Guardians. They split with the Yankees in New York, and I think if the Yankees played the Mariners today, they beat them in a series. Uncompetitive in 2 series against the Twins, splitting the 2 series with the Royals, and losing a competitive but bad-tasting series early in the season till the Milwaukee Brewers. And they haven't faced all the playoff teams yet. They haven't played the Phillies yet, who are probably the best team in baseball right now. Haven't played the Dodgers yet. They might be the second best team in baseball right now. And a whole other score of National League playoff teams that they haven't. But the American League field has looked a lot better than the Mariners have.
where do they go from here? Where does this team go moving forward?
We have to add. You got to, first of all, you need to make it to the trade deadline. You have to make it there because guys aren't really available. I know Aaron Savali got traded today, but that doesn't really mean the trade deadline's open for business right now. The Mariners need to make it at least 3 weeks without collapsing on themselves. Somehow make it 3 weeks without collapsing on themselves and falling out of a playoff spot and giving the front office any inclination that they won't go out and buy. Like, the worst case scenario is they suck for 3 more weeks. They fall out of first place. They fall out of a playoff spot. If they were to fall out of first place this week, most likely they would not be in a playoff spot because Kansas City now has a better record than they do. And then you sit there at the trade deadline, and you're in the same situation you were at last year. And that was the worst. You were stuck right in the middle. And you couldn't go any which way in one direction. And they didn't. They chose not to. And I will bet all my marbles that's exactly what they do again. Because the Mariners have been so risk-averse as an organization to try and be sustainable year after year that why would they go shell out for Luis Robert if they're sitting 3 games above 500 at the deadline? Why would they do that?
Especially if they want to keep all these prospects around, all these hitting prospects around, and say our best path forward is to let all these guys come up together, and that's how we build an offense and hope on and bank on that Julio eventually turns this thing around, which probably isn't going to please a lot of people hearing that idea and that statement, but it may be what they're thinking.
Because you sit there and you rationalize, like, even if we add this player, we're still not good enough. We're still not, and we hamper ourselves next year and the year after that, depth-wise, and what we need organizationally. So, I don't know, man. What a pickle. What an absolute pickle that this franchise could potentially put themselves in if they don't turn this thing around in the next couple of weeks. I don't want to have to sit here and be like, man, if we just beat the Diamondbacks 2 of 3 the day before the trade deadline, then we'll buy, which is what the Mariners did last year. It legitimately came down to a series before the trade deadline to make a decision on what to do. That cannot happen again. We keep harping, like they're in the window right now. The window is open. So you need to you treat the window as open, and you can only keep the window open so long, even if you get to a deadline and you're trying to do that by making a neutral trade. Doesn't make the fans happy. It wouldn't make us happy. Wouldn't make the Mariners a whole lot better, really. And unless they somehow believe that the only way this team is playoff worthy is if the guys on the current roster just turn it around and play better offensively. Like, if this lineup turns it around, that's the only way we make the playoffs. Not if we add somebody and the lineup doesn't turn around. Then we don't make the playoffs. Whoa, a mess, dude.
2 notes with that. Number 1, when you talk about the Mariners deciding to buy or sell or stay neutral, all having it boil down to that Diamondback series last year, here's a narrative people can run with. You ever thought about how Dom Canzone actually lost the Mariners their playoff spot last year? Because Dom had that game-winning hit in Arizona for the Diamondbacks. It was a go-ahead single in the 8th inning, only for the Mariners to trade for Dom Canzone a couple days later. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, if you want to run with that narrative, there's a narrative to run with. Dom lost the Mariners their playoff spot last year. But, also another funny side note that I somehow just realized recently. Do you know that Dom home run last year in the Orioles series, the crazy tie, game-tying home run in the 9th where he did the bat flip and it was a towering shot? You know that was off Mike Baumann?
Yeah, I knew that.
I somehow didn't realize that was
when
off
I first pulled
Baumann.
up Mike Baumann highlights. It was that series.
Mm-hmm. Okay, here's the second thing I was going to say. Now getting back to the Orioles series. This series, like, game-wise, final score-wise, the scores have not been blowouts. All the more reason this boils back to the offense. We're not sitting here talking about how Gunnar Henderson and Adley Rutschman jumped all over this team and absolutely carried the Orioles to a series win. No, these have been low-scoring games, and the Mariners have not hit one bit. George Kirby kept them in it on Tuesday. Mariners didn't hit. Logan didn't have his best start on Wednesday, but the Mariners couldn't score 4 runs. Like, there has been no offense in any way, shape, or form.